What's up, guys? David DeSell here, your host of the Business with the Boys podcast. And for the second week in a row, I apologize, but you are stuck with me. Landon is very much in this actual podcast recording, but in terms of this introductory segment, we are still both traveling around the country doing some business. So appreciate you guys hanging with me solo for now, the second episode in a row. But with that said, we couldn't be more excited to bring Jennifer Goldman to you. So Jennifer is actually someone who reached out to me on LinkedIn and lives in the area in which I grew up. So we immediately connected based on that. And she is just a star. Her business is essentially a consulting business that helps on the operational side of things. Essentially, her and her team scale business operations to support growth and to boost the people productivity, profitability, and presence of the company. And I kind of put her on the spot in this episode and had her walk through a case study of someone that she had a big impact on. So as you're listening to this episode, not only do I think you'll get some good nuggets out of her backstory, but also as she's going through that case study, kind of think about your business that you currently have, or perhaps a business that you're thinking about starting, and see if you can apply some of these teachings and lessons to what you have going on, or learn from some of the mistakes this company was making before you start your business. But before we dive in, big thank you to LandJet and our sponsors over there. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, LandJet is a company that's exactly what it sounds like. It's a jet on land. It's those nice bougie Sprinter vans that are all modded out. It's basically a mobile office. So for those of you who are in the Nebraska area and want to be more productive when you are on the road, no better way to do so than to get a LandJet. So would highly encourage you to explore that. Also, if there's any social outings, games, events, things like that, where you have a group of people and you want to have fun on the way there and be safe on the way back, definitely check out LandJet. So again, use the BWTB code when reaching out to LandJet in Nebraska. So with that said, let's jump into the episode with Jennifer and see what she has to share. Who knew I would make it this far? They hated, they never believed me. Yeah, I would never drop the ball. I know I make it look easy. Yeah, Mayweather with the defense. I don't care what a critic got to say. I got them picking up the pieces. That me, you really playing with your life. I'm about to come and run it all back. Well, Jennifer, I'm glad that LinkedIn exists, because without that, we may not have met. And I forget, did you reach out to me or did I reach out to you? I'm drawing a blank on that front.
No, I reached out to you. You guys did either there's a great podcast or a post and it caught my eye, and yeah, I pinged you.
And here we are. Boom. Well, yeah, well, we appreciate you joining the show. And I remember after our intro call, first of all, you're very easy to talk to. So it was like a nice natural conversation. But then we found, and I'll put her on blast right now, but your daughter's boyfriend goes to St. John's Prep in Danvers, where I went, and I was like, ooh, she's lucky. She has a gentleman, hopefully, anyways, because they spit out gentlemen.
That's right. That's right. We agreed mostly.
Mostly.
He is though. Yes.
Mostly.
David was the one exception to that rule.
Hey, hey.
You said it, not me.
Well, Landon, you would appreciate this for your daughter Bradley. So, and I'm pretty sure, Jennifer, you confirmed that this is still the case, where when we had our prom, Landon, obviously it's a, well, not
all boys
obviously,
school,
but
that gets awkward.
But it's an all boys school. And so they bus in. No, I'm just kidding. So there's other schools that are all girls, and then the hometowns and whatnot. So like when you go to the prom, you look for a date and whatnot. And what they do is they literally have time set aside during your class where they teach you how to be a gentleman. And they give you like a one pager, like, do not lay on your horn in the driveway when you pull up to pick them up. Do look the parents in the eyes and do have a firm handshake. Like, it gives you all the do's and don'ts of like all the etiquette and whatnot. And I remember that to this day. So it had a big impact. So I
Yeah, I
think you'd
mean,
like
Not,
that for Bradley.
so
yeah, and
you're
I
hitting on
asked,
my Midwestern values there. I could respect that for sure.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah, it's all written, right? I actually asked the boyfriend, he's like, oh, yeah, same procedure. Went
That's
through.
so
Love that.
cool. Love that.
World needs more of it.
They do.
Well, Jennifer, let's walk through what you do. So when we had connected, we had determined that, oh, wow, you do work with a lot of the types of business owners that we do work with. And really the types of businesses, regardless of the industry, are the ones that are looking to accelerate their scalability. So I'll say that's a fancy way to talk about the word operations, just to sort of get to the punchline. But excuse me, walk us through what is it that you do?
So basically, we're looking at the business from a less emotional lens than the execs in the team, right? We're looking at what's working and what isn't working, and we're sequencing a whole list of improvements. And just to be fair, we are absolutely operational based, but I think everyone knows going through change that there's part physical, the real changes, and there's part mental. So we work the businesses through the mental and the implementation of the changes at the same time. And then we say, we graduate you, we set you free. And at that point, you're operating better, you're thinking better, you're thinking bigger, but practical, grounded.
Love
Awesome.
that.
And I want to go through some specific examples, almost like I'm kind of thinking of this in the moment, and we didn't talk about this, previous to clicking recording, but maybe we can go through like a impromptu case study today of like
I have
business
one
lead. Oh, go
one quick
ahead.
question, kind of, because yeah, I think that would be helpful, Jennifer, for sure. But when it comes to operations, that entails like everything in a business, right?
Yeah.
So my question to you would be, are you looking at everything as far as like employees even, and sitting down doing interviews and seeing, hey, somebody may not be the right fit on the bus. This individual is probably accelerating their, or is advanced beyond where they should be. Are you doing all of that as well?
We're doing it along the way. So unlike, let's say you brought in an HR provider or consultant, right? And that's all they would do. They would really sit down, look at job descriptions, really, we're going to do it. I'm not going to say lighter because that doesn't do it justice, but we're going to do it along the way when we start to talk about the different changes, see how they react, see how they lean in versus shy away, fear, yes. So to answer your question quickly, absolutely looking at the people right up to the executives. There's no question everybody's in that camp. We also look at certainly systems and processes. That's a given, in my opinion. We look at the online presence. Does it speak and tell you the same story as we're hearing from the humans that we're interacting with, right? We look at, God, there's so much that we look at. Finances, right? Are they strong? Are they healthy? Are they done right? So we are looking at all of that. But again, we are not spending months looking at each piece, deep diving and developing, because the businesses coming to us have issues in that moment. They want to improve and keep growing. They're not saying to us, okay, we'll stop growing for a year so you can spend that time assessing us and then starting to fix. They're like, we're going to keep going. And we all know this. Everybody's going to burn out if you do it this way.
For
So
sure. So it sounds like you're kind of doing, you're generally probably brought in on, hey, we've got something urgent as a project, and then, hey, here's the full scope of what we can do and go from there.
yeah, yeah. And the
Nice.
trickle effect, right? Like if you start on one area of the business, let's just say picking your key point, like a person, right? And we know that that's a weak link. So maybe it's skills training or maybe it's offboarding, right? But whatever that changes, that has an impact on processes. that has an impact on hiring, and now you might hire, your online presence isn't right. So we have to go through the full wheel. It's not avoidable.
Always evolving.
That is correct.
All right, David,
So,
get back to your case study.
well, I was teeing up the future case study, but I want to go back in time.
Mm.
What'd you do before this?
Mm.
And I'm curious to know, like, were you always in business for yourself? Did you have a job before? Like, what was that inflection point? Because we have a lot of folks who listen to this that may not only need help and guidance from you, but also may be inspired by you, that maybe they haven't started the business yet, but they want to. So I want to get a sense of your backstory as well.
Absolutely. Backstory. Let's see. Buffalo, New York, as I said, so don't feel bad for me with my Buffalo Bills. And started working when I was 14 in a pharmacy while going to school, playing sports, the usual, and took an internship at a bank doing quality control when I was 18. While I was doing that, and this does come to a story, I also was working on campus doing campus services, which is everything to do with like a college campus, from food to professor room setup, everything. And both of those jobs actually led me to look at processes and things to improve. And so I always started off as an employee, and I kept doing that. I added finance by becoming a certified financial planner and working with very large business owners. And at that point, realized my love was actually for running and scaling businesses. And it was for making the difficult easier to understand. So it didn't matter who was in the room and how educated they were. If you're talking about something they don't understand, right, you have to bring it down to their level. I found I had a knack for that versus being like going back to school for my law degree or something. So I went and I became a business developer, COO for 3 different businesses. And then I started my own when I was in my 30s.
Love
So
that.
what was that like? Like, did you have clients lined up when you started your own bit? Like, I want to know that stuff,
Oh, you want to
Jennifer.
know the fails? Yeah. Let
Yes,
me tell
All
you.
of it.
yes.
Get the
Let's
dirty
go.
stuff out.
Okay. Okay. So the fail number 1, which frankly, I really shouldn't be blamed for. The joke was I had my daughter, I came home 3 days later, I'd worked on the business model, and I opened up business and emailed my closest 1,500 contacts.
3 days after you had a
Yeah.
kid?
Yeah. I'm type A, and yeah, this that doesn't come across on my second. So this was a late 2007. So you both know what happened in 2008, and maybe the youngins don't, but it was a bad year. So I got to tell you, that first year, all I said was, could I make enough for the part-time help I had with the kids? It was my goal. It wasn't that much. Yeah. So it took me, and I had a wonderful mentor, Richard, who's now going between Nashville and Israel. And he said, 5 years, Jen, just make it for 5 and you are officially in business. So I just kept my eye on that ball. And it wasn't until year 3 I could bring on an intern and a part-time person. It took a while. It took a while.
So going back, you said you reached out to your 1,500 contacts.
Yeah.
So it's eerily similar when I got into consulting from being an advisor. I started by, which don't try this at home. I started by sending out 400 LinkedIn connection requests per day.
Oh,
And then what ended up happening after a handful of months of doing that is I got up to like 19,000 connections, so it worked. But LinkedIn put a governor on my account,
right.
and I was not allowed to send a connection request to anyone unless I knew the email that they set up their LinkedIn with for over 2 years.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was the most
I,
LinkedIn guy on LinkedIn.
yeah. Like
Oh,
it
yeah, that's why
was.
they made the rule because of you.
Yep.
So, but my point is like, you fast forward to today, and I could track back all the different things that are happening, people that I know, back to that activity and relationships before that. So how did you reach out to those 1,500 people? Did you call them? Did you email them? Did you send a mass text? Did you post it on Facebook? Did you like, what was that like?
Yeah.
Because
And I don't
people
know if
know
you could,
people.
yeah, I don't know if you can do this now. So let me be very clear. That 1,500 give or take people had seen me. I ran an association's education events while working full time during the day while going for graduate school at night. So when I emailed most people, they had a somewhat of a recall of me. I'll tell you one thing I absolutely did, and I did for years. My picture was always in every communication. And I didn't know it till, let's just say the last couple of years, visual rocks, right? We all know that.
Mm-hmm.
But that was why there was a connection, because maybe they didn't even read the words, but they saw my face and remembered meeting me in some way, shape, or form. It just went back and forth that way.
And and this was a number of years ago, so you can certainly summarize, but I'm curious to know, like, what was your outreach? Like, what did you
Email.
say?
Oh, what I say? I'm open. No, I'm open for business. I basically said, I've landed. I'm really excited. This is the business that I'm starting. It comes, and I gave him a little bit of the background. So the purpose, like why I was out there, and went from there. I actually probably did some of my best emotional intelligence communicating then. And than I've done in many years, to be honest with you. It was pretty raw, it was pretty real, and it resonated, right? Because, when you send out emails to people who kind of buy into that or get excited, you get a lot of responses.
Crazy what happens or what you can do when your back's against the wall, right?
Yeah, it is.
A
It is.
3-day-old baby that you got to feed.
Yep, a little bit of motivation there.
Just a touch. Just a touch. And a little sense
So,
of pride. I don't know if you guys grew up with that, right? But there's this sense of pride, a sense of doing it right and well. Now,
mhm.
don't get me wrong. That email I probably worked on for like 3 weeks before, but that's
And
okay.
then you click the send.
Yeah.
So I'm also curious, and you don't need to go through specific numbers because I'm sure it depends on the scope of the engagement, but I'm curious to know pricing when you started versus pricing now. Like I think through my pricing and I'm like, okay, well, I've more than like 10x my pricing
Mhm.
now. And it's not like we're selling widgets, we're selling our brain. So
Mhm.
if someone says yes, it's like, all right, cool. And if there's an equal or greater exchange, excuse me, of value,
Mhm.
then it's fair. Did you experience something similar with your pricing over the years?
Absolutely. I'll date myself even more. It wasn't just the pricing too. I started at $40 an hour, which doesn't sound terrible, but I did it by the hour. I let people not engage me for a block. Like, whatever you need, I'll be there.
Hmm.
So now it is 10 times. It's a little bit more than that. And there's a minimum. So yeah, I've
Makes
done the
sense.
same thing as most people probably do.
Yeah, I've gotten away from the hourly and more so the hey, like once I started seeing like, oh wow, they're making way more money after working with me. I was like, okay, well let me jack this up, and it's
That's
not the
right.
time spent, it's the impact
That's right.
provided. So, but to start, you need to get a dollar in the door.
I was just gonna say, you need to get a dollar in the door. You need to start somewhere, right? And I don't know about you, but for me, I looked all around. Who am I going to compare myself to? Like that was the thing. Give me somebody that would be pseudo competition, and just tell me what your rate is, and I'll go lower. Right?
Mm.
I didn't have much to compare to. It was just unheard of. Now it's you can get lots of data.
So are you referral based from that initial outreach? Do you do marketing? Like, so if I'm listening to this and I'm thinking about, okay, I want to start a business. Okay, so I heard from you, let everyone know that you're in business.
Yeah.
What else have you done to bring on clients?
I've you're going to get me to be totally honest here. I always have done marketing. I've gone through phases where I didn't do much, and boy, did that hurt me. I can be honest. The 6 to 9 month lag later was just really painful. Uh, the referrals, yes. As I get wiser, I'm going to say older, as I get wiser, the referrals are coming better now. I think for so long, first of all, it was hard to explain our impact and what we did. I wasn't one to yell off the rooftops like we're amazing and this is what we do, because I always feel it's a group effort, right? It's not just us. They have to be willing to do it with us, right? Work on the business. And I also didn't ask for referrals. I'm great at giving advice on that note, but as far as asking, I just didn't do it. I always thought like the universe will deliver, right? Like if you do good work and they'll talk about it. The one thing I missed on this one was that the businesses that are coming to us really are not, they're hurting in some way. So those owners are not out there telling the world they're hurting. And so who would know to refer them?
Very true. I
So
think it's
on
very
that,
true for our world too, or my world too. It's like nobody wants to say, hey, I've seen plenty of successful people that are successful from the outside that, when I finally meet with them, it's like, oh, you
It's,
know, you got
yeah.
high cash flow, but you got real high spending too. And, sometimes it's just get back to the basics with them and just say like, hey, we just need to reel some stuff in. And it's more of a challenging conversation than it is even an advising conversation. It's like, we got to get the spending under control first, right? So I get that completely.
Yep. And that's like you guys both can relate to that. Like I was speaking this morning, this idea of looking in the mirror and understanding where you are and it's not looking so good, it's really hard. So I don't know about you, but I spend half of my time in the psychology of it all, right? And then the other half is we got to get something done here so you get a little dopamine hit. I mean,
Get a
I'm a
win.
sports athlete, so I want a little dopamine. I want a little go. I think they do too, but you got to juggle both.
I think it certainly helps them buy in when they get a little win, even if it's a small win early, right? It's
Yeah.
just something.
Yeah. And
I
maybe
have
it's
to,
just as simple as organizing, right? This is like for us sometimes with a business, I joke, can we USB into your head? Like just download that head that's burning up with ideas and goals and everything. Let's just go and I'll type it out in front of you. Don't worry about organizing it. Let's just get it out. And it's the same with finances. It's the same, honestly, even with brand and marketing. It's the same with your life beyond work. Like every one of those, we have thoughts in our head, but it is so mumbo jumbo that's starting to burn out.
I have plenty of clients that I always say they walk in with their proverbial shoebox of stuff, right? Like I've got an advisor, I've got an insurance guy, I've got a CPA, I've got an attorney. And I'm like, well, why the hell are you talking to me then? Right. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, because they're not connecting the dots on anything. They all work in their individual silos.
Mhm.
And where I love to get with clients is to throw the shoebox on the table and say, okay, this is good. We'll keep this. This is garbage. I'm going to quarterback this thing. I'll talk to the CPA, do the tax planning. We'll talk to the attorney, get the wills and trusts set up. We'll make sure benefit in.
Yeah.
And then it's like, I mean, that stuff is back to the basics, blocking and tackling. But for them, it's like, oh, all right. I knew I had a lot of stuff, but I didn't know what it did for me.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah. And I think, and this is where I wouldn't have said this a couple years ago, I'm evolving too. I think what they're really saying is, wow, you heard me. I'm not alone. You know how to organize it. And it seems like you got my back. So I, and this is where I've downgraded and devalued what we do, but it wouldn't matter if it's an owner of $100 million Rev Plus business or the startup, right? It just,
they're still
everybody's,
on an island.
thank you very much.
I mean, I find that like my bride is my best friend. But if I talk business to her, she's like, I love you, but I don't give a shit. Right? Like, I mean, she cares, don't get me wrong, but like, it's
Yeah,
just not her world, right?
that's right.
Like,
That's
it's
right.
like her talking beauty stuff to me. I'm like, yeah, sweet.
I'm out.
Don't,
I'm out.
yep,
That's
yep.
right.
Whatever I can do to support you, babe, love you. But,
That's right.
so the business owner world could be at a complete island, and I think, yeah, when they finally realize, because everybody else is, in their organization generally is a yes man or woman, right? Because they're the boss. What are they
Mhm.
going to say,
Mhm.
And I like sometimes when I get some feedback that is unsolicited from my team, because it's like, look, I don't know what you guys are doing on daily. I know what needs done, and you guys take care of it. There's an easier way to do it. Ask David. I call him up all the time because he has all sorts of connections from his 19 plus thousand LinkedIn followers. And I'm like, hey, I need somebody to do this. And he's like, I got you, right?
That's right.
And I'm like, well, talk to the team because this is what we need done.
That's
And
right.
it can be a very lonely place. So I can
Mhm.
completely relate with that.
Mhm.
Jennifer, one of the things that I struggled with and worked through, and I'm curious to get your perspective on this, because again, there's people listening in that are also dealing with this, which is imposter syndrome. So
Mm.
I had um, when I first started, one of my clients that it was like maybe my only client or one of two. I was 27, 28, something like that. And he was 55, made over $1 million a year as an advisor. I was 28, uh, living with my dad, um, and had no revenue, right? And one of my buddies was busting my chops, and he was like, "No offense," which obviously, whatever he says after that is going to offend me. But like, what business do you have with that? He has more life experience, more money. And I'm curious to know. So, like, what I did to over rotate was like that year, I read or listened to about 240 books, countless podcasts, like just consume, 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 learn, learn, learn.
Mhm.
And I'm sure that there's been more times than you probably care to admit where you walk into a business and you're like, I have no idea what I'm going to do yet, but I am confident enough or ballsy enough
Yes.
to say yes and figure it out. And one thing that I've learned over time is that no one knows how to do anything really. Everyone's just figuring it out, regardless of your age, regardless of
Mhm.
your income. How did you personally work through those instances? Because I know you had them.
Yes, and I still do. So if
That's
anybody
good. That
thinks
means you're growing.
that's my deal. Listen, I say I'm growing till I die. I'm a continuous learner though. I'm called the geek in my house. It's wonderful, when you come home with some books from the library, or maybe you actually buy them and your family makes fun of you, but putting that aside. Uh, yeah, the imposter syndrome, I can relate totally to that. Listen, I was talking to millionaires. When did I start about? I was 24 years old and I just moved from Buffalo to Boston. You want to talk about green? And, you know, I guess the drive to be successful, definitely I'm a type A. So if you're not, maybe you can't relate to this part. Um, also the fact that I was voraciously reading and I was willing to be vulnerable. I was willing to say, I don't know this, but I absolutely will find out because I'm surrounded by experts. I just, and if you're on your own in a business, right? Who are your experts? Other providers, other people? You just hit up anybody. If you're part of a company, well, they should be literally a walking distance away or a Zoom away. But that's how I think I've gone through it through my whole life. It was a mix of the reading, it was a mix of leaning on other people and admitting I didn't know everything. Mm,
I'm still that way today, and I've been doing this 15 years, right? It's like
that's right.
I think that's the only way to be. If you try and act like, because there's no way that anyone is, that you're an expert in everything, especially in my world, in your world,
Mm,
um, with the way tax laws change, the state, everything is moving all it, and then you're supposed to keep up on the markets. You're supposed to, no, it doesn't. It's not a reality, right? So
no,
you have to leverage and I think people sniff right through it if you pretend to be
that's
the end all be all.
yep, yep.
So I'm very similar where I'll tell people, look, um, I call myself Bobby Beans. If you've ever seen the movie Two Guns, I know a guy, right? So again, whether it's David or I've got a great relationship with a number of individuals here in Omaha
Yep.
that I've been intentional with that I think are very, very knowledgeable and are
Mhm,
experts. And I've got
mhm,
zero issues being vulnerable
yep,
and saying, I don't know, but I'll find you the answer and the best in the business at it.
yep. And I think that the people that you go to the answers for, like this is where I maybe would give advice if I were asked. I always felt like, oh, I'm so sorry to bother you and ask you this question so I can answer this to somebody else. Are you kidding me? People love to show off their expertise. I don't, I kept sorry, that you should not do. When
No.
you go to somebody and say, as long as you don't waste their time, you respect it, right? You protect it, you ask them when they're available, and then you pose the right question, you're done. Like, people respect that. And so, yeah, if anything, on the imposter, there are more people out there that will answer your question than you think. And you're absolutely right. And I'll say this, I'm now of the age where I'm getting to be the older person in the room. The younger people can pick it out like that. If they know if you're lying, they're just better. And because of that, you better not lie. You better just say, I don't know, I'll get back to you.
They've lived their life online. Most everybody online is a lie.
Right?
They learned to
Right? And
sniff
they
that
know
out pretty quick. Yeah.
Well,
That's so true.
it's also like, think about, and I know I can attest to this, Landy can attest to this, Jennifer, I'm sure you can attest to this. Like, when someone does ask you a question and you are able to show off your expertise, but also you're able to see the impact that it has on them, like, that's a shot of dopamine. That's some psychological income that I personally love, Landon loves, but your facial reaction you love. So when it's your turn to ask someone else the question, don't feel like you're bothering them. Almost have the mindset of like, I'm giving them the opportunity to get that shot of dopamine to help me, right? Just kind of like reverse that. So it's just interesting. I'm going to back to let's do a quick little case study. So let me kind of set the stage. I'm putting you on the spot, so feel free to think for a moment, but I'm gonna sort of outline this. So I'm curious to know a business, we'll call it, business XYZ or whatever. We can leave the names out. But I want to know things such as their revenue,
Okay.
the
Industry.
Okay.
Employee
Employees.
count, roughly,
Okay.
the top or the problem they hired you for, the problems plural that you fixed, because I'm sure that there was more than the problem they hired you for, and how you went about fixing it and ultimately the impact. So I know that's a lot there. I know
I'm writing
that
it down.
I see you writing it down, so I appreciate that, because I need to be better at not asking 4 questions, 10 questions in one question.
No.
But you wrote it down, so we got it organized.
Yeah.
Because halfway through, I'll forget the questions that I asked.
So I'll keep us on track.
So with that said, on your mark, get set, go.
Yeah.
It's amazing if I can respond like this. Okay, so there are so many. I'll give you one because whatever they tell you, whatever comes first to mind, you should go for. All right, so this was a biotechnology company for, I'm going to go in different order. 11.1 million in revenue.
Gross revenue.
That's correct. Sorry, gross revenue.
You're good.
And I'm going to tell you about their engagement so you understand it's not lifelong revenue because that's a big difference. Profitability, net profit, under $500,000.
Wow.
There's an issue.
I think we know already where I'm going with this. I said the industry. Employees, 49 employees. Problem. It's never one. Because when people
But there's usually a problem that they hire you for,
Yeah.
and then you realize there's more.
Absolutely. So I would say, well, one thing was mentioned was profitability, clearly. That was an issue. The second thing was not getting alignment. It's not necessarily about the right people on the bus going in the right direction. The bus wasn't even going, didn't have all the people on the bus, much less going the right. They didn't want to get on, if we had to do the analogy. And the executive knew where they wanted to take the business. They knew they wanted to at least 2x it. And
Single owner. Sorry, never mean to cut you off. It was a single owner.
No, the successor is the one that wanted to take business in the right direction, and he was a minority owner.
So
The founder was
primary owner and one minority owner was the ownership group.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. Yep. Keep asking questions as I punch
Yep.
through this because there's so many tentacles to this, right? Like,
oh yeah, for sure. Once you open Pandora's box, it just goes.
Yep. And this business, not everybody was in the same geographic location. Almost everyone was in the United States, just to be clear. And this business had a heart purpose like you wouldn't believe. I won't say it because it might make it more obvious, but it definitely had a heart purpose that was not on the website
So
and did not, yeah.
that's my next question is, so you've set the stage of this scenario.
Mhm.
What'd you do to help them out? And then fast forward to when, because you mentioned earlier that they graduate,
Yes.
right? I'm curious to know what they looked like when you were done, particularly around revenue, profitability, and employee headcount. So what did you do to help them out? Also, write this down too, so we don't forget how long it took you. Was it a year? Was it a month? Was it 2 years? I'm curious to know.
Also, what did the ownership group demographic wise look like? How old was senior equity holder?
Mhm.
What was minority? And was senior ready to exit or no? I'm assuming no, obviously.
That's
But
correct.
yeah,
That's correct.
they never are.
It came out of their mouth that way. And the majority owner was I'm trying to use plural so you don't know, in their
Mike Hanna
70s.
is a registered
And the
representative
minority
of and
owner
offers
was in
securities
their
and investment advisory
50s.
services through MML
Got
Investor
it? So
Services,
that's laying
LLC.
the table
Member
there.
SIPC.
We were always or
www.sipc.org.
only
Azura
hired
Wealth
6
Advisors
months
is not
at
a
a
subsidiary
time.
or affiliate of
It was a
MML Investor
year and a
Services,
half.
LLC, or its affiliated
I'll give
companies.
you the
Supervisory
numbers and then
Office,
let's come back
420
to what we
Lexington
did
Avenue,
because
Cool.
most
25th
people,
floor,
Yeah,
Is that
get
Suite
to the punchlines
2510,
to
New York,
to reel them in.
NY
Hopefully they're good.
10170,
well,
212
pretty good.
578
11 million went to
Investing
15
involves
million
risks,
in
and
terms
Year
of
past
and a
revenue.
performance
half.
is not indicative of future
Yep,
results.
year and a half. That I know, crazy. And it wasn't just us. I always tell you it's a team approach. And then also too, in terms of profitability, under 500,000 went to a little over 3. Number of employees went from 49 to 43 and offered to be acquired at a multiple that seemed absurd by
So
2 different institutions.
so I want to for the listeners. So what was the multiple? Like 6x, 12x, like what was it roughly?
11x. And they
Okay.
started in that industry, it's normally around 3x. And the reason for the 3x versus the 11, it's like an engagement. This company was hired to do engagements maybe for 6 months or a year and a half, and that was it. There was not longevity to the engagements. They constantly had
So
to find new clients.
so for folks listening, just so you have some context, at an 11 times multiple, you take 11 and you multiply that by, call it round up and say $500,000 before you arrived. Okay, let's just, which they wouldn't have got that multiple anyways, but
Correct.
okay, they wouldn't have gotten that, but still, that would be $5.5 million upon sale. Okay.
Mhm.
But instead, you take the 11 times multiple by, call it 3 million, rough numbers. You go from 5.5 million to 33 million in valuation after a year and a half of getting your shit together.
I think you undercharged them, and I haven't heard what you've charged them yet.
I don't want to tell you.
And you had a 36% gross revenue increase.
All I can say is I've been told by a few that I should just take a percentage of net new revenue or net
Kind of
new
thinking the same.
whatever. Yes.
Kind of thinking the same thing, Jennifer.
I know. Thank you. You can be like everyone else, stand in line. It's all
This is
good.
the advisor in me. Sorry.
Hey, no. There's no sorry. It's good advice. I can't do it. Here's the deal. And let me tell you what we did, because it is a we, all right, and not by just my team. Mostly it's them. They got to be willing to go through this. This is tough stuff. We're all about visualizing a functional org chart, visualizing growth projections, numbers, visualizing responsibilities and roles and changes in that. How do we shift around that? Everything we do, processes, tech mapping, it's all visual. This is now, it's not rocket science, and it's definitely not now because now we have the science behind it. But up until a couple years ago, this is what we did to accelerate decisions, accelerate the no's, like the essentialism. We're not going to do this. Talk about benefits, even the business planning improvement, it's all visual and shared. So that's why I say it's a we. They got to be in the game. They got to have their eyes open. As far as the guts and the heart, we can get into that. That's the tough part. That's the psychology of it. But if they're in it and they see it, it's usually, I'm not going to say a no-brainer, but for those that really want this, they're like, yeah, now we just got to figure out when. And that's where we come in and also do the sequencing. And that's back to Landon, like, give them little wins. Most of the time, the little wins are giving them time and energy. That's got to be the first thing. So then they have that to give to a bigger initiative.
Well, it's the whole EOS system in a process right. I mean, it's just little wins add up to big wins over time.
That's right. That's snowball, right? And then communication. This idea of how do you communicate to the team? Because part of that team doesn't like the ground moving underneath them. And the other part of the team is like, bring it on. So you got this whole like dynamic. And by the way, the person that didn't like the ground moving underneath them was the
probably 70
owner.
years old. Yeah. I have to say was 70 years old. I get that.
That's right. Wanted the number, wanted the buyout number.
Yeah, of course.
But didn't want what comes with it.
Of course. See it all too often, don't we, David?
Yeah. Well, so and I want to get I'm going to keep pushing for a specific. So I want to know, like, was it we helped automate X to create some additional bandwidth and profitability?
Okay.
We helped create standard operating procedures. We helped roll out a new service offering that was recurring in nature, recurring revenue. Like tactfully, what happened?
Okay. I might use jargon, so call me out. Okay. An easy one is they had a CRM, and of the 49 people, don't even guess how many were actually in it using it. Done deal. Everybody's in, or we get a cheaper CRM, not bar none. Okay. So that was one play. And by in, I don't mean just because some people still think this, a CRM for sales, like a HubSpot or something where you're just looking at your lead gen. No.
Everything lives in there.
Everything. That's right. Your operations. So you have a record for legal and a record for finance, and all the tasks go underneath those for the company. And then everything else could go under the client lead records. So CRM was one big deal for communication. Another big deal was they were using 3 different project management softwares. 3. Oh my God.
That's insane.
Insane, right? And then on top, none of them were they using for their business strategy work. Like, let's talk about these top 10 ideas we want to do. I'm thinking, why you didn't even put them in one of the 3 systems? So what do you think we do? I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's not rocket, right? But how we got them to realize and agree quicker is to tech map and show them you have 3 of the same softwares. This is a lot of money. Let's just cut 2 down. And yes, some people were like, I love that software. I don't want to do it. We had to sell them on why the other one was going to work just fine. And when they asked for a bonus or compensation increase, the firm could say, you know what, we might be able to do that now because we just got rid of softwares. Okay, so appeal to that bottom line sometimes. So that was the PM. Client experience. This is a fun one. So Excel, Word, universal language. Write out all the different types of clients, right? Write out past clients, revenue, labor cost, compensation per se, or whatever. Now profit, pretty clear which clients should have never been brought on and who needed to be shed.
And who to search more like in the future.
That's correct. That's correct.
So while you're going through that, I want to interject with a silly example. So one of our clients, and if he's listening to this, he'll know that I'm talking about them. So, like the impact that you can have on a company doesn't necessarily need to be sexy. So this was, this is a manufacturing company who we still work with today and been in business for a number of years. And I asked him, you mentioned, just directly to the bottom line. I asked him, I was like, hey, so you guys ship all your materials out to your customers in cardboard boxes, right? And he said, yeah. I said, okay, how long have you been working with your supplier of cardboard boxes? Oh gosh, 20 years. I said, okay, when was the last time you asked if they could do any better on price? I'm not talking like hardball negotiation because you probably golf with the guy still, like, just when was the last time you asked if you could do better on price? Well, I haven't asked that. I said, okay, can you go ask that and let me know how it goes? So he said, okay. And so he literally asked, hey, can you do it any better on price? I don't know how long that took just then, but it was probably 2.5 seconds. Okay. The guy came back, and when you annualize the price per box, over how much they're using, they save $50,000 on cardboard freaking boxes at an incredibly modest 4x multiple. That 2.5 seconds generated 200,000 in value. So oftentimes, and I'm sure my whole point of bringing up that story is the stuff that we help folks with
Isn't always
is
earth
it
shattering.
it's not always brilliant or anything like
No.
that, but it's, hey, let me pull you out of the business to work on it because you are stuck in it every single day. So it's like, okay, well, that cardboard box question basically paid for the engagement. The rest is icing on the cake,
That's right.
So I just wanted to interject. So keep going with your list of things, but I wanted to emphasize the fact that
That's right.
imposter syndrome, it's like, ask the stupid questions. If you don't know how to add value, ask the stupid questions, and people will be like, oh yeah, I never thought of that, or you're right.
That's right.
So
Take
I ended
advantage of that
up,
low-hanging fruit.
That's
yeah.
right. That's
Yeah, we
right.
did that in like the first like 3 weeks. I was like, oh, cool. Okay, we're good now. I got it.
You have me for life now. You're going to want me for life.
Oh,
It is.
man.
It's so, it is so true. And that's like, when you tell these stories, people are like, yeah, it can't be true. And listen, for every story that is good, there's a story that isn't good. Okay. That, just to be fair and ground this in reality, but these stories exist. And it's just, I can't look at my business the way an outside party could. That's what I've always had, a coach. And every once in a while, a business psychologist. There's always somebody out there on my team to help me get out of my, the day to day. And so anyway, so let's keep going with this. And in essence, that's kind of what it became. The other thing that happened with all this is we really looked at I call it the functional org chart. I care less about who reports to who than who is mentored by who has somebody to servant leadership with them. And I also am a big fan of using outside providers, not because I'm one, but because it actually works for the numbers too. And it lowers, in moments of change, there's lots of emotions running. But the one emotion you don't have to deal with is the outside providers. Their job is just to stay the course, do a great job, and just that's their job. So we really maximize the use of the providers. At this point, this business had an outside marketing help, outside HR. I have to look up to think. Didn't have outside legal. Yeah, outside HR on that was it. So, and they were kind of staying on the sidelines. And so I pulled them in tighter. Like, we're going to have this kind of like C-suite call. You're going to bring all your C-suite people. That's what's not happening, by the way, 49 people. And I'm like, you're bringing all your C-suite type of thinkers and strategists in the room, and let's just talk about what's on the table. And just by doing that, it's the 1 + 1 + 3. One person says something of an idea. The other person says, well, what about this? Which makes it 10 times better. And then the other person says, I got it. I'm it to do it. That was it.
You just said two things that my like jaw dropped the way you said it, and you're going to be like, well, that's super simple. I'm going to be like, well, that's profound. And then we're going to be like, well, that's what we do, is we share simple things that other people think are profound. You care less about who reports to who and more about who mentors who. And that's a sort of a bottom up sort of view of like the reporting structure, to know what are you doing to empower the people below you in that proverbial or actual org chart, which I thought is just a great way to think about it. And I had never, because I believe a lot in outside support and fractional roles, and I always thought about it as, do that until you have the revenue to bring it in house. But what you said about it, taking emotion out of it and drama and ego, is gold. And you can be $100 million company with fractional outside support, where that's their area of expertise, where you hire that one company for their one area of expertise that has a team behind them to execute. I hadn't heard of it that way, Jennifer. That is great. And I'm going to steal that moving forward. So thank you for that.
Well, and one of the things I think about too is, again, if you have a business owner, right, and they have somebody working on it in-house, they are again an employee. Now, not to say that when you hire an outside company to do it, that they're, you know, they're essentially kind of acting like an employee as well. But I don't know. I just look at it, if somebody hires me, I'm not just going to give them lip service. I'm going to shoot them straight, right? Like,
Well,
you want,
you have
you're,
diversified income because you have other clients where that
yeah,
employee has to be careful what they say because
correct.
that's 100% of their income.
That's
I
That
feel like
is,
people are paying me to get real with them, right? And I, quite frankly, had this conversation with one of the spouses of a couple that I work with, where he kind of called me offline. He's like, "Hey, I think I can decipher what you're saying here. And if she needs to hear it, she needs to hear it." And I was like, "Well, if I got your blessing, let's go." And so that's what we did, right? And yeah, it was kind of like, "Hey, I don't know if I think this is a good idea from your financial planner standpoint." And he picked up the phone and called me, and it's like, he's like, "That's what I pay you to do," right? Just kind of reaffirm that. And so for sure, that's definitely the case.
And it comes across, what you did comes across genuine and sincere and in their best interest without the spouse in the room. It's not degrading the person you're saying that message to.
Yep.
It's just, it's almost no different, right, than taking the two owners, right, and separating them. Sometimes I call it Switzerland because we all want this visual in our head, right? But it's not really. It's having a heart to heart with each of them. Like, what's going on there and what's going on here, and giving them that message. That being said, I would like to presume, and this is dangerous, that most providers are willing to do this. Like I've always joked and said, I do not have the best business model. I want you to graduate and use the tools and rise up, do great. And I also will tell you the truth at the expense of my own engagement.
Yep. I'll let you know when you've outgrown me.
Yep.
I love it. That needs to be clipped out, that section. Yeah. Or clipped out, meaning for content, not to remove it. Yes. Yeah. Clipped out so no one knows our secrets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's not share. Let's be the opposite of what we're talking about here. Yes.
That's funny.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything else now that you put that up on a post.
No, but that in and of itself is, I can see how the things that you just listed out had that impact on the company, and it's getting people in the right seats of the bus moving in the right direction. If you want to kind of stay in the clouds with metaphors and analogies or whatever. But I think to sort of sum that up to a degree, there's certain things that you were probably able to help them with that are super impactful, not widely known, but other things that are super impactful that are clearly obvious. Like I have a problem where I walk into a business and I'm like, well, why wouldn't you just do it like this? Like even a restaurant, I'm like, that experience was trash. Why wouldn't you just do this? So sometimes it's just stating the obvious, but they're so blind because they see it every day. It's like the Febreze commercial where you become nose blind to the smell in your house. It's like you become blind to the issue in your business because you look at it all day.
Yeah.
So that's good. I like that a lot.
I'm glad you like it. I probably have more where that came from. I mean, just what you said, we're always learning, we're always evolving, we're always applying, and things just, you have to go a little bit with the flow, and then you have to go against it sometimes to switch the brain and the agreement. There were times, and I will say this, in the year and a half, there was serious friction. There was actually friction moments.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing that we started doing is saying, kind of like setting the table for friction, saying, when it gets uncomfortable, would you like to just sleep on it? Would you like me to call it out in the room? Like, hey, this feels really uncomfortable right now. How would we like to deal with this? Like, what do you want? And set the table at the beginning of engagements or relationships. And so that was another thing that we started actually learning to do better during the engagement. And so the minority owner who true leader started doing that with his team. And I said, you know what? It's fine to, let's like that pregnant, pause. I don't think we're supposed to do that anymore, but I'm a woman. I guess I can say
You
that.
can do that. You can do it
Can
how
I
you
still
want.
that? Okay.
Yeah.
We got
But, you know, like,
no rules on this
No.
podcast,
good.
Jennifer.
Okay. So like, you know, that pause where it's like really uncomfortable and nobody says anything, it's okay to ask a question and let that happen. And that's what he started to do. That was the other thing that changed the paradigm about leading and getting more acceleration of change, was letting them come up with the solutions, putting the problem in the room and saying, okay, what do you think we should do? And let them work it out. And I know it was painful for this leader to do that and watch their team, because their team was learning how to tackle things, right? Because this leader had done it for a while. But
Goes back
boy,
to
when it hit the
FIFO.
mark,
So we have
Sometimes
this.
you just, yeah, go
we have,
ahead.
we have this saying, FIFO, and it doesn't stand for first in, first out. It stands for figure it the you know what out.
But you have to, right? I mean, you have to have, I mean, if you're constantly providing all the answers to the, you know, your employees and your team, there's no growth there,
No.
right? They need to, you know, and if it's not the answer you're looking for, you need to also obviously explain, hey, here's my rationale and here's how I got to where I got, you know, explain to me how you got to where you're at. But it's empowering for your employees and your team to go through that process, I think. But it is tough to sit there and bite your tongue when it's like, this could be, I know how to fix this real easy,
Well,
you know.
there's another saying that's, you know, more appropriate, that I've latched onto, which is conflict, friction, right? One and the same. When handled directly, right? Not tiptoed around, but hit head on, but sprinkled with some grace, tends to build relationships. So I like how you share, Jennifer, like being direct. Hey, I feel this, but then having a plan of like, how do you want to handle it? We're not avoiding that. If you need a day, if you need a minute, if you just want to hit it head on, let's go. But when you handle it directly, sprinkled with some grace, tends to build relationships. And what I'm sure you found is when you had friction in that engagement, you know, either with you and them or internally, just them, when you did that, you probably ended that engagement. Granted, they're way wealthier on paper now. But regardless of that, you probably left having a great relationship with them.
That's right.
I'm working on the sprinkling some grace thing. I'm more like a hammer, blunt object. My wife.
By the way, I am too.
Yeah.
There's a time and a place for these things. Okay. Let's do the joke, because this is right. I have a sand clock that I had to practice breathing while they were going through making whatever they were trying to do in their brains. I have a rubbing stone. I mean, I can't tell you how many things I've got.
Yeah.
And they knew it. Like I get on a call with a client and be like, I'm going to pick up my rubbing stone right now. And then I'm going to ask you a question.
I love that.
I would practice right in front of them. We're not the people that are great at it. And maybe David, you're great at it. You know what? That's wonderful. And that's just, you're blessed with that skill. Some of us are not. And that's okay, because we have our purpose in whatever we do. But to tailor it and to show them, because you know what? They may be inside in turmoil. They may be inside biting their tongue. So
what I need to do is work on, sorry, Landon.
You're good.
But what I need to work on is, you said, David, maybe you're great at it. I think with clients that I am, what I need a rubbing stone for is the people who aren't paying me that I happen to live with, AKA my wife. I can, you know, she's like, you would never, you know, respond like that to a client. And it's like, oh shit, you are 100% right.
Yeah.
So I'll get myself a rubbing stone.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. Rubber band, rubbing stone. Trust me, I got all sorts of things for the home life. You know, my parents used to say, you need to butter people more. That I said, well, we take our people that don't pay us for granted. And that's just normal, right? Like this is.
I always just say I communicate with people how I like to be communicated with, and I love direct, like don't shy away from conflict at all. So, you know, that I have to reel that in a little bit. So yeah, it's a good lesson for everybody. But
Hmm.
to put a big shiny bow on this thing, I'm anxiously awaiting. So how did this thing play out? Did
Hmm.
we exit primary owner? What was the end of
Yeah,
this?
because sometimes they get reinvigorated and want to
Yeah.
stay.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Yes.
Well,
they
you see
take
the
the
multiple
paycheck and
go
leave.
up and,
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know,
like, whoa, we got it.
yeah.
No, it's gonna happen. They cannot tell me, which means they're under wraps and legal, the legal documents at this point. Uh, they will be tucked into a larger business that actually aligns with their culture, which I love. And the reason it will happen is because the majority owner needs a payout all in one lump sum. And to
Tell him to
fund
holler
it,
when he gets it.
what? You
Tell
want
him
to
to
call who gets
holler at me when he
it?
gets it. I can find something to do with that.
Yeah, it might be a stand in the line deal, unfortunately, with this guy, because he let a lot of people know there's a little ego in this one. Did you
Yeah.
catch that in the
He might need to talk to me then. We can bring that
yeah,
into check real quick.
yeah, seriously, right? I should just stand at his door. Yeah, he really wanted it, and also they wanted it. They wanted a clean sever. Like, there's no more tie to this company.
Yep.
You're out. And so to finance that would have been too painful.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
I was
because
wondering.
even, we tell the story and it's great, 3 million profitability, but here's the deal. The number of dropped employees going from 49 to 43, just to be fair, that, some people got off the bus voluntarily. They just didn't fit. They didn't want to be a part of change,
Yeah,
ground
you
moving,
weren't
right?
going
Happens.
in there necessarily chopping heads off or anything
No,
like
no, not
that.
at all. Most of it was volunteer. But they do need to staff up. This is a business that could be international, and they were still domestic US based. And so they're going to need all those dollars to
It's
take
not
care of
the,
people.
yeah, say it's not just the nut for the purchase. You would have to have some operating capital and growth capital as
Exactly.
well infused in. And
Yeah.
so, no, I get that.
Yeah.
Well, good. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
Oh.
that's very impactful. And you kind of alluded to this. I don't know if you would consider it methodology or frame of mind or whatever, but one of the things that we ask all of our guests before we wrap up is a book that's had an impact on them.
Real quick
And
before that, Jennifer,
oh,
I want to know what your team looks like today.
oh,
Because you've alluded to the fact it's not just you anymore. What's your makeup of your team look like?
Yeah, I feel you're going to hold me accountable. It's not a bad thing. You can check with me next year. So my team right now is I have 2 strategists and I have a bunch of outsourced people. So books, legal, marketing, you name it. They're all on the outside team. And that's the team as of now. And I'm sitting on lots of resumes.
Nice.
Lots of
Love
people
it.
want to do
Congrats.
this work.
Excited to watch you grow.
Yeah, this is my second time scaling, and let's see how this goes.
I love
It's
it.
going to go well. I can already tell.
Thank you. Thank you for the good mojo. I could use it.
Absolutely.
Good vibes.
Yeah. All right. You asked me on book.
So smart brevity, and
Mhm.
you had alluded to this earlier in like some comments here and there, but what's the impact and ahas that you got from that book?
2 things. One thing was for myself that writing short, impactful words was good because sometimes I was chastised for not writing long prose. And I'm like, that's not my style. Let's get to the punch. Going back. And also, what was bigger is about talking with a lot of business executives who are having trouble communicating clearly and transparently to their team. And I took that away from that book. And it's a short read, to be frank, where I don't know about you, but I got a list of books that's up to a ceiling that I still need to read. So I loved it. I thought it's something that everybody should really read. You learn how to communicate better, shorter, more impactful. It's more respectful of the people that are listening. And frankly, it incents change in action. So
Can you explain that again? That was a little too long for me. I'm just kidding.
I was going to say clear, concise, and to the point. I love it.
I'm just teasing. I'm just teasing. Well, Jennifer, this has been wonderful. If I'm listening to this and I either want to follow along with what you have going on, or maybe I'm interested in actually utilizing your services and expertise, where can we find you?
I think the best place to find me is my virtual COO. Just
My
Google it and you'll get to me.
Okay, perfect. MyVirtualCOO.com.
Mhm.
Excellent. Well, Jennifer, this is a pleasure. I hope that your daughter and her boyfriend work out because he's from the prep, so I'm a little biased. But
Even if the departure is not great, it'll probably be done well thanks to St. John's.
Yeah,
right,
exactly.
right.
Yeah. He'll exit gracefully, and that's all you can ask for.
That's
Oh,
exactly.
That's funny.
Landon, good luck on volleyball and being
Thank
a
you.
fan. You're
Thank
welcome.
you. Yeah, we got the big first tournament or I guess it's a duel today, so we'll go see. So
Yeah.
hopefully it goes well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jennifer, thank you. It's been great.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Who knew I would make it this far? They hated, they never believe me. Yeah, I would never drop the ball. I know I make it look easy. Yeah, Mayweather with the defense. I don't care what a critic got to say. I got them picking up the pieces.